My name is Lily Selby. I am 30 years old. On my wedding day, the entire family section was empty. 12 white folding chairs sat in neat rows inside Grace Community Church. Each chair had a small piece of lavender tied to the armrest. Programs were placed carefully on every seat. Not one member of my family showed up. I work in an emergency room. Every day, I help people during the worst moments of their lives. I stay calm when others panic. I have held the hands of scared parents and comforted patients who thought they might not make it. But nothing prepared me for looking at those empty chairs. My coworkers quietly moved around the church, trying to fill some of the seats so the wedding photos would not look so lonely. That hurt more than I can explain. My father later told me he would make it up to me. What he never told me was where my money went. Or how nearly 3 months later, at my sister's wedding, everything would finally come crashing down. The wedding was held on a warm Saturday in June. It wasn't fancy. There were only 45 guests. The flowers were arranged by a local florist who gave us a discount. The music came from a playlist on a USB drive. Everything was simple. Everything was paid for by Joel and me. Joel stood at the front of the church wearing a navy suit he had bought on sale. When the doors opened and I stepped inside, he smiled at me. For 1 second, I smiled back. Then I saw the family section. 12 empty chairs. No mom. No dad. No sister. Nobody. My maid of honor, Kara, squeezed my arm. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Joel's best friend quickly asked a few coworkers to move into the empty seats. They weren't family. But they cared enough to show up. I took a deep breath and kept walking. When I reached Joel, he took my hands. They made their choice, he whispered. Now we make ours. I nodded. The ceremony continued. I told myself I was okay. I told myself everything was fine. I had spent years learning how to push pain aside and focus on what needed to be done. That day was no different. At least that's what I wanted to believe. The reception was held in the church hall next door. There were paper tablecloths. Pulled pork sandwiches. A beautiful cake made by Kara's wife. It wasn't expensive. But it was perfect. It was ours. Joel and I danced together. For a little while, I forgot about the empty chairs. Then my phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times. After the dance, I looked. The messages were from my younger sister, Dana. The first message was a selfie. Dana stood on a beach wearing a white bikini. Behind her stood our father, Craig, wearing a bright floral shirt. My mother, Gail, stood beside him holding a colorful drink. All 3 of them were smiling. The second picture showed clear blue water stretching toward the horizon. The third message said, "Best trip ever. Wish you could see this water." I stared at the screen. My family wasn't sick. They weren't trapped somewhere. They hadn't missed my wedding because of an emergency. They were on vacation. In the Maldives. While I was standing at my own wedding reception. I felt my hands shake. I quietly walked to the restroom. I turned on cold water and ran it over my wrists. I stared into the mirror. Breathe in. Breathe out. Just like I taught frightened patients. Eventually, the shaking stopped. But the hurt stayed. 3 weeks before the wedding, Dad had called me. I had just finished a long overnight shift at the hospital. I was sitting in my car. The sun was rising. I was exhausted. "Hey, honey," Dad said. That tone always meant trouble. Dana's boyfriend's family has a villa in the Maldives. I waited. It's only available during that week. I frowned. What week? Silence. Then he said it. The week of your wedding. I felt my stomach drop. Dad, that's my wedding day. 5 seconds passed. I know. Nothing else. Just I know. Then he continued. This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip. I stared through my windshield. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. What about my wedding? You'll be fine. Fine. That word again. You have Joel's family. Fine. You have friends. Fine. It's a small wedding anyway. Fine. Everything was always supposed to be fine. I sat there listening. Mom agreed with him. Dana needed them. The trip was important. The people they were traveling with were important. Everything seemed more important than me. Finally Dad said, "We'll make it up to you later." Then he hung up. Just like that. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there. Feeling empty. When I told Joel, he didn't try to make excuses for them. He didn't defend them. He simply listened. Then he said the words he always said when life became difficult. I'm here. That was enough. It had to be. After the wedding, Joel and I returned to our apartment. No honeymoon. No luxury hotel. Just home. Our apartment was small. The bathroom sink drained slowly. The carpet needed replacing. The kitchen was tiny. But it was ours. Joel had placed candles beside the bed. A bottle of sparkling cider waited on the nightstand. We sat together quietly. He lifted my hand and looked at my wedding ring. It was simple. A thin platinum band. No diamond. We had bought it from a pawn shop and cleaned it ourselves. We paid for this, Joel said. I nodded. We paid for the wedding too. Another nod. We don't need them. I leaned against his shoulder. Part of me agreed. But another part couldn't stop thinking about those empty chairs. 12 chairs. 12 empty reminders. Then another question began bothering me. A practical question. A nurse question. The kind of question that appears when facts don't match. Dad had told me money was tight. Very tight. He said there wasn't enough money for a big wedding. He said I needed to keep everything small. But somehow they could afford a luxury vacation in the Maldives. How? Where did the money come from? The answer began years earlier. When I was 20. Fresh out of nursing school. I had just received my first real paycheck. Dad sat me down at the kitchen table. He explained his idea. A family savings account. Both daughters would contribute money. Dad would manage it. One day, when we needed help buying homes, paying for weddings, or handling emergencies, the money would be there. It sounded reasonable. It sounded responsible. I trusted him. So I agreed. Every month, I deposited $300. Every month. For 12 years. No exceptions. No missed payments. Not once. That added up to more than $43,000. Dana only started contributing a few years ago. Her total was much smaller. But mine? Mine was almost the entire account. I asked Dad for statements several times. He always had excuses. The accountant has them. I'll send them next month. I'll get them later. And I always let it go. Because I trusted him. A few days after the Maldives trip ended, Dad called. He sounded cheerful. Almost excited. How was the wedding? He asked. Like he was asking about a doctor's appointment. It was fine. Good. The Maldives were incredible. I closed my eyes. Of course they were. He spent 20 minutes talking about the beach. The sunsets. The luxury villa. The people he met. Especially Trent's father, Harrison Calloway. Apparently, Harrison owned one of the biggest supply companies in Tennessee. Dad seemed obsessed with impressing him. I listened quietly. Then I hung up. Later that night, Mom posted vacation photos in the family group chat. The caption read, "Family time is the best time." I stared at the words. Family time. Interesting. Because they hadn't spent any family time with me. The next morning Dana texted me. "Sorry, I missed your wedding." I kept reading. "Honestly, your wedding was pretty small anyway." My chest tightened. Then came the line that stuck with me. "Dad said the family fund was tight, so we had to keep your wedding budget small." The fund was tight. That sentence echoed in my head. If the fund was tight, how could they afford the Maldives? How could they afford matching outfits? Luxury resorts? Expensive flights? None of it made sense. 3 weeks later, Dana announced her engagement. A huge diamond sparkled on her finger. The wedding would happen in only 2 months. The venue was already booked. Everything was already planned. Dad immediately replied, "We'll make this the event of the year." I read those words several times. The event of the year. My wedding had been treated like an inconvenience. Dana's wedding was suddenly the event of the year. The fund had been tight for me. But apparently it wasn't tight anymore. Something was wrong. I could feel it. Just like when a patient's symptoms don't match their chart. Something important was being hidden. I just didn't know what it was yet. A few days later Dad called. He wanted me at Dana's wedding. He sounded desperate. "Both daughters need to be there." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "You weren't at mine." Silence. Then excuses. Always excuses. It was different. It was bad timing. "We'll figure it out." There it was again. "We'll figure it out." His favorite sentence. A promise that never meant anything. Mom called too. She begged me to come. "Please don't make this harder." I almost laughed again. Harder? My family had skipped my wedding. Then sent beach selfies. And I was making things hard? Still, I stayed calm. I always stayed calm. But something inside me had started paying attention. Watching. Listening. Collecting details. Because sooner or later, the truth was going to appear. And when it did, I wanted to be ready. The pressure to attend Dana's wedding kept growing. Dad called. Mom called. Even Dana sent messages. They all wanted the same thing. They wanted me there. Not because they missed me. Not because they felt sorry. Because they wanted everything to look perfect. They wanted a happy family picture. They wanted both daughters smiling together. They wanted appearances. I wasn't sure yet if I would go. But I was sure of one thing. Something was wrong with the family savings account. And I needed answers. One night at work, I sat in the break room during a short break. The emergency room had finally become quiet. A little girl with a broken collarbone had just been treated. Her mother had cried with relief. The girl had squeezed my hand and stayed brave. I admired that. Sometimes children are stronger than adults. I sat down with a cup of coffee and opened my banking app. I stared at 12 years of transfers. Every month. $300. Never missed. $43,000. Gone somewhere. But where? I couldn't see the account online. Dad had arranged paper statements only. At the time, I never questioned it. Now I did. A few days later, Dana's wedding invitation arrived. It looked expensive. Very expensive. Gold lettering. Heavy paper. Fancy design. The kind of invitation wealthy people send. I compared it to ours. Joel and I had printed our invitations at a copy shop. Simple. Affordable. Practical. This invitation probably cost more than all of ours combined. Mom included a handwritten note. Please come. It won't feel right without you. I stared at those words. It won't feel right without you. My wedding hadn't felt right without them either. But they went to the Maldives anyway. That night Joel found me staring at the invitation. You going? He asked. I don't know. You've been saying that for weeks. I sighed. He was right. But the truth was, I wasn't thinking about the wedding anymore. I was thinking about money. About numbers. About things that didn't make sense. The fund was supposedly empty. Yet Dana's wedding looked like a millionaire's dream. The math wasn't adding up. And I trusted math more than people. The next morning, I drove past the church where I had gotten married. I slowed down. I saw workers stacking chairs. White folding chairs. Just like mine. For a moment, I saw those empty seats again. 12 empty chairs. 12 reminders. 12 reasons I couldn't let this go. I pulled into a nearby parking lot. Then I made a phone call. Not to Dad. Not to Mom. To the bank. Hello, I said. I'm a co-owner on a joint savings account. The woman checked the records. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. The statements are mailed to a P.O. box. A P.O. box. Not Dad's house. Not my address. A P.O. box I knew nothing about. Dad had changed the mailing address. Without telling me. Without asking me. That was all I needed to hear. I requested copies of the statements. The next day, I drove to the bank. I brought every document I had. My identification. My account paperwork. Everything. The teller handed me a folder. Inside were 12 months of statements. I thanked her. Then I sat down. And opened them. The numbers hit me like a punch. 6 months before my wedding, the account held over $53,000. Then the withdrawals began. $8,000. $12,000. $7,500. More withdrawals. More money disappearing. Again. And again. And again. By the time I reached the final page, almost $38,000 was gone. Only a few thousand remained. I sat frozen. $43,000 of that account had come from me. 12 years of work. 12 years of sacrifices. 12 years of holidays spent inside hospital walls. Gone. Back at work that night, I spread the statements across the break room table. Then I started researching every transaction. The first payment was $12,000. The company name sounded familiar. After searching online, I found it. A luxury travel company. Specializing in Maldives vacations. My breath caught. That was the trip. The trip they chose instead of my wedding. The trip I had unknowingly paid for. The next transaction was $8,000. Callaway Catering. Trent's family business. Dana's wedding food. Paid with my money. The next payment. A wedding planner. For Dana's wedding. Paid with my money. Then flowers. Then venue deposits. Then decorations. Every single thing connected to Dana's wedding. Every single thing paid for using money I had earned. Money Dad had promised would help both daughters. Money he spent on one daughter while abandoning the other. I sat there for a long time. My coffee grew cold. I didn't notice. Because something inside me had finally broken. Not my heart. That had happened months ago. My silence. That was what finally broke. When I got home, Joel found me staring at the statements. He read every page. His face became harder with each line. We should confront him. I shook my head. No. Why not? Because he'll lie. Joel didn't argue. He knew I was right. Dad always had a story. Always had an excuse. Always had someone else to blame. I wasn't going to give him time to prepare. So what do you want to do? Joel asked. I looked at Dana's old beach selfie. The one she sent during my wedding. The one with the turquoise water. The one that started all this. Then I looked back at Joel. I'm going to Dana's wedding. His eyebrows lifted. As a guest? I slowly smiled. No. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared. I obtained certified bank copies. Made extra copies. Stored them safely. Highlighted every withdrawal. Every transaction. Every payment. Every lie. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing for the truth. And truth works best when supported by evidence. Dad called again before the wedding. You're coming, right? Yes. Relief filled his voice. Good. Then he added something that almost made me laugh. Wear something nice. Wear something nice. The same man who skipped my wedding was now giving fashion advice. I simply hung up. The night before the wedding, I laid out a navy dress. Simple. Professional. Calm. Joel looked at it. You look like you're going to court. Maybe I am. Then I slipped the certified bank statements into my clutch purse. 6 pages. 12 years. $43,000. All fitting inside one small bag. The next evening we arrived at the Callaway estate. It looked like a movie. Beautiful lights. Expensive flowers. Luxury everywhere. Valet parking. Live musicians. Hundreds of guests. Money had been poured into every detail. And I knew exactly where some of that money came from. Dad and Mom greeted us immediately. Dad looked thrilled. You came. Of course he was happy. His perfect family picture was complete. At least he thought so. For now. The ceremony began. Dana looked beautiful. The crowd loved every second. Dad proudly walked her down the aisle. That part hurt. Because he hadn't walked me down mine. He was busy vacationing in the Maldives. But I stayed calm. I waited. Patience mattered. The right moment was coming. The reception was even more extravagant. Expensive food. Expensive decorations. Expensive everything. I sat quietly beside Joel. Watching. Waiting. Listening. Then came the moment. The father of the bride's speech. Dad stood. Raised a glass. And smiled. Family is everything. The words echoed through the tent. I nearly laughed. Family is everything. Interesting choice. He continued. Everything I built has been for my daughters. The lies flowed easily. Smoothly. Naturally. Like he'd practiced them. Then he said something that made my decision easy. We support each other. Support. That word hung in the air. Because I knew exactly what his support had cost me. I stood up. The room quieted. Dad smiled. He thought I was giving a toast. Dana smiled too. Everyone expected a sweet family moment. Instead, they got the truth. I walked to the microphone. Took a breath. And spoke. I wasn't planning to talk tonight. The room became still. But my father said something I think deserves a response. Dad's smile faded slightly. People exchanged glances. Something felt different. They could sense it. I spoke calmly. Clearly. Like I was explaining test results to a patient. I told them about my wedding. The empty chairs. The missing family. The beach vacation. The family savings account. The 12 years of deposits. Every word landed harder than the one before. Then I opened my clutch and removed the certified statements. The room went silent. Completely silent. I explained every withdrawal. The Maldives vacation. The catering. The flowers. The planner. The venue. Every dollar. Every receipt. Every betrayal. Dad stood up. His face turned red. Lily, stop. I didn't. For years I had stopped. Not anymore. I continued reading. The evidence spoke for itself. Guests stared. Whispers spread. People looked at Dad. Then at the statements. Then back at Dad. And they understood. Dad slammed his hand onto a table. This is family business. His voice cracked. I looked directly at him. You made it everyone's business when you stood here and talked about family. The room became even quieter. Then Dad tried another strategy. He claimed he was going to pay it back. Eventually. Later. Soon. The same promises. The same excuses. The same lies. But nobody believed him. Not this time. Because now everyone could see the evidence. Then I looked at Dana. She was crying. Real tears. Not fake ones. I could tell. And for the first time all night, my voice softened. I don't think you knew. She shook her head immediately. I didn't. And I believed her. Because Dana was spoiled. Selfish sometimes. Thoughtless. But not cruel. Dad had manipulated her too. Just differently. I folded the statements. Placed them on the podium. Then I said the final thing I needed to say. The remaining money in that account can be considered my wedding gift. A gasp moved through the crowd. Dad looked ready to explode. You ungrateful child. He shouted. His perfect image was falling apart. And everyone could see it. For years he controlled the story. For years he controlled the family. Not anymore. Then something unexpected happened. Harrison Calloway raised his hand. Dad immediately stopped talking. The wealthy businessman looked furious. Not at me. At Dad. That told me everything. Business deals mattered to Dad. And those deals were suddenly in danger. I stepped away from the microphone. I wished Dana and Trent happiness. Then I walked away. No screaming. No insults. No revenge speech. Just truth. Truth was enough. Dad followed me outside. The guests watched. 200 witnesses. No escape. No hiding. No rewriting history. Lily. I turned. Dad looked different. Smaller. Weaker. Not powerful. Not important. Just a man caught in his own lies. He begged me to come back. To talk. To fix it. But I was done fixing things for him. I looked him in the eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't need his approval. I didn't need his praise. I didn't need his excuses. I didn't need anything from him. Not this time, Dad. Then I walked away. Joel drove us home. We rode mostly in silence. For once, the silence felt peaceful. Not heavy. Not painful. Peaceful. Like finishing a difficult shift after saving a patient. Like finally setting down a burden you carried for years. The phone started ringing. Dad. Mom. Others. I ignored it. The truth was already out. There was nothing left to argue about. 2 days later, Dana called. She cried through most of the voicemail. She apologized. She swore she never knew. I believed her. Because for the first time in her life, she sounded honest. Then something remarkable happened. Dad returned the money. All $38,000. Every cent. Within 10 days. Funny how quickly money appears when public embarrassment is involved. I withdrew every dollar. Then I closed the account permanently. No more secrets. No more control. No more lies. Mom eventually called too. Her voice sounded tired. Your father won't speak to me. I didn't know what to say. Then she told me something I never expected. You were brave. I sat quietly. Nobody had ever called me brave before. Strong. Responsible. Reliable. Sure. But brave? That was new. A month later, I wrote 3 letters. One for Dad. One for Mom. One for Dana. Each letter said the same thing. Love without honesty isn't real love. From now on, any relationship with me must be built on truth. No manipulation. No guilt. No empty promises. Just honesty. Dana responded first. Slowly, we started rebuilding. Not perfectly. But honestly. For the first time. Mom tried too. She sent flowers to the hospital. No note. No explanation. Just flowers. Maybe that was her way of saying sorry. Dad never really apologized. Not truly. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe admitting the truth would force him to face himself. Some people spend so many years protecting an image that they forget who they really are. Life eventually returned to normal. I kept working night shifts. Joel stayed by my side. The apartment was still small. The coffee at work was still terrible. The fluorescent lights still buzzed. Patients still needed help. Life continued. But something inside me had changed forever. When I looked in the mirror at 3 in the morning, I no longer saw someone pretending everything was fine. I saw someone honest. Someone strong. Someone who finally chose herself. And that made all the difference. Because your worth is not measured by who shows up for you. It's measured by whether you show up for yourself when nobody else will. And for the first time in my life, I did. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a comment below. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Hidden Family Revenge Stories, for more powerful family revenge stories every day. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next unforgettable story.